Hey there, Inner North Youth Group. We are continuing in our series in Philippians. So if you have a Bible nearby, make sure you've got it and you've got it open to Philippians chapter 2, because we're going to be going from verse 12 all the way through to verse 18. But why don't you keep that open and we're going to get started. The question I have for you is, what is it that you think makes us like the stars in the night sky so much? I think it's because we love the fact that these giant explosions that just keep happening for like millions of years. Do you think it's the fact that they're tens or hundreds or thousands or millions of light years away from us? Maybe it's the fact that there are so many of them. You know what I think it really is that makes us like stars so much? I think it's the fact that there's a pinpoint of light in the darkness. They stand out against the nothingness of space. Well, in today's passage, Paul encourages us to shine like stars in the sky. So we're going to see how we can do that. Why don't you open up your Bibles and we'll have a read. Philippians chapter 2, verses 12 to 18 says this. Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine like stars in the sky as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I will be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain. But even if I am being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So you too should be glad and rejoice with me. Well, the first thing that you've got to do when you read a passage like that is, if it starts with the word therefore, you've got to ask what the therefore is there for. Well, Paul, the writer, he's referring back to the passage that we read last week. If you remember from last week, we talked about how Jesus came from heaven, he became a man, and then he lived on earth, and he died a death on a cross, and then he rose again to new life, and he went back up into heaven. He's now seated at the right hand of God, and everyone in heaven and on earth is going to worship him. He's saying then, because of what Jesus has done, it's time to obey him and to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Now that's a weird phrase. You might think it sounds like we've got to be afraid because we don't know if God is going to save us, so we've got to keep working to make sure that we're saved. But that's not what he's saying. The fear and trembling is about seeing the magnificence of who God is and what he has done for you when he saved you. Then now you are in awe of that. Respond to that by living the life of a saved person. Do the work of someone who is saved, because it is God who is at work in you. That means live differently because you have been saved by Jesus. So the question is, if people looked at your life, could they tell that you have been saved by Jesus? If I told you I was a footy fan, you wouldn't be able to tell from my life. You wouldn't be able to tell from what I watch on TV, because I never watch footy on TV. You wouldn't be able to tell from me going to games, because I never go to games. You wouldn't be able to tell from the things I know about, because I don't know the name of anyone who plays. You couldn't tell from the sport that I play, because I never play footy as a sport. I never play any sport, really. If I told you I was a fan of footy, you wouldn't believe me because you wouldn't see it in my life. You would know that it wasn't true. But if I told you I was someone who loved movies, then you would probably be able to tell. From where I'm sitting right now, I can see the box sets for Lord of the Rings and Superman and Harry Potter and Monty Python movies. I can see a book that's all about Wes Anderson. If you looked at the way I spend my money, you could see that I spend my money on going to the movies and on renting movies and on paying for subscriptions of Netflix and Stan and Amazon Prime so I can watch movies. And you look at the way I spend my time, you would see that I watch movies. You can tell that I love movies because of the things I spend my money on, the way I spend my time, the things I talk about, the things I read. If someone was to look at your life, could they tell that you were a follower of Jesus? Are you living out what it means to be saved by Jesus? And Paul gives us two ways that we can show that distinctly. He says in verse 14, do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine like stars in the sky as you hold firmly to the word of life. So two major ways that we show that we are living out our salvation is the things that we talk about and how we interact with people. We don't grumble and we don't argue. There are a lot of things that you can grumble about in this life. About getting up early, about going to bed late, about having to go to Zoom meetings, about not being invited to other Zoom meetings, about having to stay home all the time, about having restrictions lifted so you're going to have to go outside, about having to go to school, about not having to go to school, about seeing your friends or not seeing your friends, or people talking to you or not talking to you, about having to do your chores, or other people doing your chores and you having to do other chores that you don't want to do, about people getting in the shower when you wanted to be in the shower, or your favorite TV show getting cancelled, or your favorite TV show getting changed, or having to watch too many ads when you watch your favorite TV show. There's so many things that you can be grumbling about. And arguing, it's so easy to argue. There's so much stuff that we can argue about. We can argue about small and insignificant things like whether Harry Potter or Star Wars is better, or Coke or Pepsi, or Xbox or PlayStation or PC or Mac. One of the big things which divides us all is about whether strawberry milk or chocolate milk is better, and I'm very glad I had these in the fridge just so I could hold these up right now. But then there are other arguments that we can have which are more relational arguments. That people are getting on our nerves, someone's not doing what we want them to do, someone does something to us that we don't like. Particularly with our family and the people we're closest to, we can argue about all sorts of stuff and stuff that doesn't matter at all. But if we make a commitment to be people who don't grumble or complain and don't get involved in petty arguments, then we would stand out. We would stand out like a star in a dark sky. And people would wonder what is different about us. Well, the difference would be that we are full of joy and thankfulness, not because everything in our life is perfect. When Paul wrote this, he was running from prison, so everything is not perfect. But we know that we have a God who came from heaven to earth and died for us and rose again, and one day we are going to rise again and be with him in glory. Like, that is something to rejoice about. If we live differently because Jesus has made a difference in us, when we choose to let go of our petty grumbles and arguments, then people will see that we are different and they will want what we have got. And we will be able to share with them the good news of what God has done for us in Jesus. And they too will be able to shine like stars in the sky as they put their trust in Jesus, just like us. Well, that's our talk for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Why don't you listen to Real Life Tom, who's going to tell you what's happening next.